One that raised up each of you, and God has allowed us to be brought here to this specific moment in time.
This is Jenna Ellis in the morning.
Good morning. It is Monday, August 18th, and a absolutely horrific story is making headlines. On August 12th, near Fort Pierce, Florida, a tragic incident occurred on the Florida Turnpike when a truck driven by an alleged illegal who had entered the U.S. illegally in 2018 made an illegal U-turn, resulting in the death of 3 individuals in Florida. He was charged with 3 counts of vehicular homicide, and apparently, despite his undocumented status, the driver had obtained a commercial driver's license, or a CDL, in the state of California. So this incident, of course, has sparked discussions about immigration policy and the safety implications of places like California and the impact on home states like mine of Florida, with a blue state policy now affecting other states and red states. So joining me now is Florida's Attorney General James Uthmire. And Attorney General, thank you so much for joining me on this. What is Florida's response?
Well, Florida is certainly going to enforce rule of law. We've already announced that charges are being filed, at the least for vehicular homicide here in the state of Florida. So this individual is going to do significant time behind bars in the state. Eventually will certainly be handed over to ICE for deportation, but I want to make sure the public understands that will not happen until he has served his time. We will hold him accountable. We are looking into how exactly he got this heightened permit that allows you to drive the larger trucks and tractor trailers, 18-wheelers. I mean, doing this requires some skill, so there are trainings and requirements that should be in place. California obviously gave him a license and this permit. So we're looking into that. We're going to fight back against California as they expose other states like Florida to harm, and we will make sure that this individual is held accountable for the deaths of these 3 individuals.
Yeah, and from a policy perspective, I mean, obviously, Florida has been doing so much to push back with the opening of Alligator Alcatraz and to really support the Trump administration's policy of enforcing immigration rules. Why does Congress still think it's okay for someone who is illegally in the country to be able to extend their time by making false asylum claims? I mean, in many of these cases, these illegals can defer their removal for a decade or more because the immigration courts are so backed up.
Yeah, it's certainly a problem that Congress needs to address. I know there are several members that would like to do so, but you hit the nail on the head, Jenna. People are here illegally. They learn how to game the system, and then as they're going through the deportation due process, timeline, they suddenly make an asylum claim, and these judges will give them a hearing date that's several years down the road, and then they give them parole and let them go free. So you have people here illegally. They then, engage in some terrible things, many of them. At Alligator Alcatraz, we've been detaining thousands of individuals, and the large majority have either been convicted of or are charged or wanted for heinous crimes ranging from murder and homicide to sexual abuse and trafficking, and individuals that, also engage in behavior like what we see here. This individual should not have had this license. We'll be looking at the company that contracted him to figure out, who dropped the ball. But altogether, it is a major problem. Thank God Trump came in to secure the southern border and is finally enforcing federal laws that are on the books. We didn't need new laws. We're just enforcing what's always been there. And I do hope that Congress will come together in bipartisan fashion, because I do think people on both sides of the aisle are now realizing the significant harms that our country has endured from the open border. I hope they will come together and proactively, fix the problem for the long term.
And I'm speaking with Florida Attorney General James Ethmeyer, and California Governor Gavin Newsom has kind of hit back and entered the policy arena on this, pointing out that this particular driver allegedly entered the United States in 2018, and of course, Donald Trump was the president then. In my opinion, that doesn't really matter exactly when he came into this country. The fact of the matter would be that he came in illegally, and that's what the Trump administration and also the state of Florida is trying to prevent. And so, what's your message to Gavin Newsom in the midst of this tragedy?
Well, my message is, the entire federal administrative state bureaucracy has been poisoned into allowing, people to come in illegally. You've got leftist judges that also have an ideological push to grant asylum claims, to provide long-term hearings. But at the end of the day, this person was here illegally and was granted a right that he should not have been given. And we're going to continue to investigate. We certainly do not allow this in Florida. You cannot get driver's licenses if you are here illegally. We passed that into law to make it very clear several years back when we prohibited sanctuary cities. Gavin Newsom's doing a lot of crying and concerned pleading regarding these heinous criminals that are here illegally. He should focus more on American citizens. That's who he was elected to represent.
Well said. And, my former home state of Colorado, similarly to California, and, is unfortunately going the way of the leftist mentality a while ago, allowed for non-citizens, as they call them, of course, illegals, to obtain driver's licenses, not CDLs, but at least driver's licenses. And the policy argument at the time was, well, they're going to drive anyway. And so if we don't allow them to at least get driver's licenses, then they can't get insurance. And so this is actually more harmful to the citizens of the state if we prevent illegals from obtaining driver's licenses. What's your thought on that?
Well, driving without a license is a crime in many states. In Florida, we've had to get creative under Democrat rule in D.C. in finding ways to arrest individuals and ideally queue them up for detainment and deportation. The federal government would not allow states to enforce immigration laws previously. They preempted us and said it was a federal responsibility, and the courts largely agreed. So it helped us to identify people that are breaking the law if they were pulled over, committed a crime, and did not have a license. I'll also say that having a driver's license naturally enables you to obtain a lot of other benefits in states. And we, did not want illegal aliens qualifying for and having opportunities, to obtain a lot of the rights that lawful citizens that are here legally have. So I think those states that want illegals to have driver's licenses are dead wrong. I'm glad that we have not done that and indeed have pushed for the opposite in Florida. And I would say it has paid off. We have record crime lows. We're constantly enforcing the law. And when it comes to enforcing against illegal immigration, we're doing so at a rate, more than 3 times any other state in the country.
Well, this is exactly why I moved from Colorado to Florida, because I appreciate the enforcement and your and Governor DeSantis and now Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins and now CFO Blazin Gogley. I mean, we just have such a great executive here in Florida. It's incredible, and I agree with your policy analysis. And so for Florida, when you're looking at the impact of the policies of other states like California with this specific driver who obtained the CDL in California, and then obviously now this crime happened and in Florida, is there any way that the Florida legislature could maybe add a requirement or something to look at trucks or these large vehicles coming in at the port of entry to maybe have to show proof of citizenship or some other type of way that Florida could perhaps have more even road security, if we want to call that border security? I mean, I don't think that the founders intended the full faith and credit clause to be used and frankly abused in this type of manner.
I agree with you, Jenna. It's something we're certainly looking at, especially in light of this and other recent events. I think the Commerce Clause, while it's been applied broadly across the country, it certainly does not allow for illegal activity to be permitted to cross state lines and not give states the opportunity to regulate or conduct some oversight. So again, it's something we're looking at. The ability of people to move freely in the country once here illegally, and embed into communities far and wide. It's why the open border problem was such a crisis. I believe the left thought that they could fundamentally change the composition of this country. They wanted illegal aliens in all of our cities and regions. Ultimately, they wanted to count them in the census, give blue sanctuary states unequal, disproportionately high electoral power, because from the census you get electoral votes, you get federal funding, you get more representation in Congress. And then many of these states and leftist localities, they wanted to find ways to give illegals the right to vote, give them driver's licenses, you name it. So thanks be to God, President Trump stepped in, shut down the border. The left didn't get away with their plan, and now the president is delivering on his promise, and we're certainly here to help to detain, deport as many people as possible, bring back American sovereignty, restore public safety, and ultimately give the voters what they elected.
I'm speaking with Florida Attorney General James Othmeyer, and now Florida has opened a second, basically alligator Alcatraz with, I think it's called the Deportation Depot, and this is a great thing to expedite these deportations and ensure that we're getting these illegals out of the country. You'd mentioned in this instance that this individual you're going to pursue fully carrying out a sentence if convicted, pursuing to the greatest extent of the law, which I applaud. Some will ask, why not just pursue deportation immediately? And I'm assuming that's because it may be too easy to simply come back into the country. That's what President Trump is trying to prevent.
That's right. A lot of people have expressed concern as they hear about, a lot of these criminals being deported right away. And you're exactly right. Some of these other countries that these individuals come from, you certainly cannot rely on their criminal justice system to incarcerate these people, especially for the time that they would otherwise get under U.S. law. So we're going to make sure before we hand anybody over to another country outside of our control, we need to make sure that they are held accountable here in this state and that they are held for as long as possible, in my opinion. That's certainly my pursuit as Attorney General of Florida. So heinous criminals like this, we're going to make sure that they do the time here in the state before they are ultimately deported so that we can protect our American families for as long as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I let you go, Attorney General James Othmeyer, I wanted to ask you one more question about this banning of 7-0. This is a Schedule 1, or HHS is asking the DEA to make this a Schedule 1 substance drug. You've now banned this in the state of Florida. It's a synthetic opioid-like drug, and it's estimated to be more potent than morphine. But for parents out there, they need to know it's often sold as gummies, shots, and pills. This just seems like yet another way that the drug crisis is continuing, and the state of Florida has been very much on the front of this with, of course, Governor DeSantis last year coming out strongly against Amendment 3, which would have made recreational marijuana legal in the state of Florida. So in my view, this is just continuing that kind of policy in the state of Florida to protect kids mainly, but protect all of our citizens.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Jenna. I was a few weeks back, the Trump administration, the FDA, they issued a warning highlighting the dangers of this drug. I'll be honest, I like, many parents, thankfully my kids, the three of them are 5 and under, so I don't have to worry about them going and purchasing things in gas stations. But I was not aware, I don't think many parents were aware, that this new synthetic chemically enhanced drug, 7-OH or 7-hydroxy as it's called, it is an extract from a plant, a Southeast Asian plant called kratom, kind of similar to the hemp family, part of all these new chemical drugs that are found in smoke shops and oftentimes in gas stations and convenience stores. But this one in particular is so highly concentrated and chemically enhanced that, as you said, The physicians I talk to that are seeing, increased hospitalizations, they call it gas station heroin. It's up to 13 times more potent than morphine, and it was just right there on shelves in retail stores. So we did something that's very rare. I don't believe, I'm a small government, limited government guy. I don't believe government should be interfering in business rights unless it is an imminent threat to public safety, and that's what this was. So we rescheduled it through the emergency authorities that my office has here in Florida. Not every state has it. To prohibit the sale, it becomes Schedule 1 in the state, can no longer be sold commercially, could only be used if a doctor pursues some sort of medical treatment. And then ultimately, my power goes until the legislature meets next year, and they can decide to either ratify the rule, modify it, or regulate or prohibit the product in their own way. So we took quick action here in Florida. This is not going to be available to hurt our kids for the foreseeable future, and I hope other states will follow suit, because this is a very dangerous drug.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Attorney General James Uthmeier, thank you so much for your time this morning, and for always looking out for the citizens of the state of Florida with these types of policy rationales. And I'm obviously a small government person as well, constitutional conservative, and yet government is needed when you step in to restrain evil and ensure that we actually do what's best to protect especially kids in the state. And so this is what emergency powers are actually for. And it's a really, really great thing that you're willing to do that and step in until the legislature can come back into session. So thanks so much. You can follow Attorney General James Uthmeier on X. I'd encourage you to do that. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Here at the AFA Foundation, we help families just like yours shore up permanent income for their retirement years through our charitable gift annuities.
AFA Foundation's Associate Director, Chelsea Wildman.
We would love to work with you to see if a charitable gift annuity is right for your situation. With a charitable gift annuity, you'll be giving to the culture-transforming work of the American Family Association, and you'll be ensuring that you receive a lifetime income and excellent tax benefits. You can fund a CGA through cash, credit card, or stock. Why not reach out to the AFA Foundation team today?
A charitable gift annuity benefits you and helps ensure the AFA will impact America for generations to come. Call 800-326-4543, extension 345. That's 800-326-4543, extension 345.
Give us a call and let's talk about a charitable gift annuity.
If the paint on the side of your house began to peel, or the roof started leaking, or your porch light burned out, would you just sit around and do nothing? Well, of course not. Hi, I'm Mark Gregston with Parenting Today's Teens. When things start to fall apart around your house, we instinctively grab a screwdriver, reach for a paintbrush, or do whatever it takes to get things back in order. And in like manner, our relationships need maintenance too. Has your relationship with your teen become damaged by conflict, tension, or poor communication? Sounds like it's time for a little home improvement. Take on this important do-it-yourself project before it's too late. Read a good book, attend a helpful seminar, and above all, keep reaching out to your teen.
Want more help from Mark Gregston? Find books and other resources online at parentingtodaysteens.org or search for Parenting Today's Teens in your favorite app store.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes. Stand by for news and commentary next. Baylor University is struggling with an infestation of wokeness among its student body. Baylor was once the largest Baptist school in the nation. Now they prefer to be known as a Christian school. A recent lecture stirred controversy when the speaker identified as Christina Crenshaw, raised an issue regarding transgenderism. She was asked whether parents who don't want their daughters sharing a bathroom with a boy had any say in the matter. Students accused her of being unkind and unwelcoming to transgender people. They filed a formal complaint. The Baylor Lariat, the student newspaper, condemned Crenshaw as being transphobic. They later retracted that accusation and apologized. The controversy was so outrageous, the provost, Nancy Brickhouse, wrote an editorial in the student newspaper defending the lecturer's freedom of speech. You know, it's a really sad day when Christian students at a Christian university can't even muster up Christian fellowship. Be sure to get a copy of my new book, Twilight's Last Gleaming, at toddstarnes.com.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. So turning to all things Putin and Zelensky, the meeting with Putin and the summit in Alaska was preliminary and productive. According to Trump, he said that he would rank their discussion as very good, 10 out of 10. He also posted on Truth Social, a great and successful day in Alaska. The meeting with President Vladimir Putin of Russia went very well, as did a late-night phone call with President Zelensky of Ukraine and various European leaders, including the highly respected Secretary General of NATO. It was determined by all that the best way to end the horrific war between Russia and Ukraine is to go directly to a peace agreement, which would end the war, not a mere ceasefire agreement, which oftentimes do not hold up. President Zelensky will be coming to D.C., the Oval Office, on Monday afternoon. If all works out, we will then schedule a meeting with President Putin. Potentially millions of lives will be saved. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Seems like that's Trump's favorite sign-off on his Truth Social posts lately. So let's welcome in Ray Alexander, who is a retired naval officer. And Ray, this seems to be going well despite the leftist headlines that I was seeing over the weekend since the Alaskan summit that, tried to hysterically claim otherwise. What is your view on the situation as it currently stands?
I agree with your assessment, Jenna. I think that this is a very productive step toward some negotiated settlement. I agree with also your assessment of the mainstream media's take on it, which seems unwilling ever to give any sort of credit to the Donald Trump administration for taking the necessary and uncomfortable steps toward peace, especially in such a long and drawn-out conflict as Ukraine.
Yeah, and so there have been reports suggesting that President Trump has encouraged President Zelensky, instead of ceding Crimea, to look at joining NATO. That's been something that's been a goal of Zelensky's for a while. How do you see that potentially playing out?
I haven't heard that, Jenna. I would be very shocked to see Trump agree to bringing any portion of Ukraine into NATO. And I'm also surprised to hear that Crimea is on the table for negotiation. Crimea has been annexed to Russia since 2014. I don't think that Crimea is even in play during these discussions. What I think is in play is, and actually probably not, when you consider the Russian foothold on eastern Ukrainian provinces like the Donbass and Zaporizhia. I honestly don't think it's realistic that Russia will let those go even during these final stage negotiations.
Yeah, and there's I think your response to that just shows that there's been a lot of different reporting out of this, and probably a lot of speculation in terms of what is and isn't on the table, and it may be more of the Ukrainian or pro-Ukrainian bent that's talking about them still joining NATO. I too would be surprised if that was President Trump's push, but it's possible that Zelensky's going to still hold that. But what leverage does he really have now coming into these discussions, especially with Trump meeting with Putin first? That seems to be a little bit advantageous, I think, to Putin, rather than kind of showing favor or any kind of solidarity to Zelensky, which Congress has really shown. So what do you make of the players and how this is kind of shaping up?
Yeah, well, back to the point about I think perhaps there's some misinterpretation in the media about the comments that were made after the meeting on Saturday about the United States providing Article 5-like protection guarantees for the Ukraine. For Ukraine, Putin was willing to entertain some U.S. Article 5-like protection over Ukraine, which I interpret to mean that if someone goes to war with Ukraine, they would have to face the U.S. military. That is essentially what Article 5 guarantees in membership with NATO. So that was an interesting development from Saturday and something new that we hadn't heard. Steve Witkoff mentioned that in his press conference in an interview afterwards. So I think maybe that's what's being interpreted as sort of NATO-like protections of Ukraine. And then I read on the situation. I mean, a lot more will come out today, hopefully, with this meeting between Trump, Zelensky, and 6 or 8 European leaders. I think Germany, UK, Italy, I think possibly France are all going to be in D.C. meeting with both Zelensky and Trump. And that's of course, Europe has interest in what is negotiated, and I believe Europe also feels defensive of its interests in these negotiations, rightfully so. What I think is going to come of it, to be honest with you, and this is somewhat conjectural, but I think the sticking point that Trump mentioned, the big sticking point that Trump mentioned was territorial concessions, where Zelensky is responsible to his government and his people for maintaining its territorial sovereignty. And then Russia, I don't believe, is interested or has really any incentive to release the territory that it's taken over. And the controlled territory, the occupied territory by Russia, is about 60 to 70%, holds about 60 to 70% of the mineral and oil wealth in Ukraine. So even just from a very pragmatic resource-based analysis, Russia really has very little incentive to let go of it.
Well, then, so what realistically could be a potential compromise here and enter into this kind of agreement if both Russia and Ukraine are probably holding fast to those positions as you just described them?
Yeah, I really honestly have not seen a way out for the Ukraine. I don't believe they have sufficient leverage to dictate terms to Russia. In fact, a recent poll came out earlier this month, I think it was published on the 7th, where 69% of the Ukrainian public, this is on a Gallup poll, 69% of the Ukrainian public support a negotiated settlement or a negotiated peace. And that's up from about 22% back in 2022. And it's been nothing but an upward trend until now, when we're at 69%, which support negotiated peace. And I really don't see any leverage that Ukraine holds in this scenario, unless and except Europe stands aggressively behind Ukraine. And heretofore, they've been unwilling to do so. I mean, going all the way back to 2014, when they just let Russia annex the sovereign territory of Crimea. So that's. I don't think it doesn't look good for Ukrainian negotiations. I believe that, and this is conjecture, but I believe that there really is no other option other than for them to accept territorial concessions.
Wow. Well, I'm speaking with Ray Alexander, who's a retired naval officer, and could these discussions then actually increase the risk of escalation if there isn't an agreement forthcoming out of the meetings?
It depends. So I don't think there's a risk of escalation for U.S. involvement, or at least certainly not boots on ground U.S. involvement. In a very, very unlikely scenario, you could imagine that the United States might support arming or armaments, continue to support arming and armaments of not just Ukraine, but NATO at large in support of continued fighting in the Ukraine. Perhaps in the most extreme scenario, perhaps air cover, air superiority support from the United States. unlikely that would be flyover of Russian territory. But I can imagine a scenario where there might be some negotiated settlement that establishes, fixes the fighting positions now, establishes a DMZ, demilitarized zone, and perhaps NATO, maybe with U.S. support, establishes a no-fly zone over the DMZ. It's sort of a stalemate kind of, sort of Korean-style armistice in eastern Ukraine.
And one of Trump's kind of long-standing critiques has been that European nations don't really pay their fair share for that kind of defense. And so this meeting, bringing in other European leaders, not just having the negotiations strictly with Russia and Ukraine, does this imply that Trump is going to expect the EU leaders to now step up to satisfy the United States expectations?
Well, I think what I think he's going to negotiate, again, this is conjectural, but I don't see very many other options. What I think is going to happen is Trump is going to aggressively push both Ukraine and our European allies to accept territorial concessions in this afternoon's meeting. I think that is the sticking point. Whether or not that's freezing the lines as they are, or perhaps trading some regions in the south for regions in the east, it's some kind of more nuanced territorial concession plan. And then Trump's alternative is going to be, well, then Europe, you've got to figure it out. You've got to actually stand what the kids say, 10 toes down, and actually, back up find an alternative solution and back up Ukraine more aggressively and commit greater resources to finding a solution here. That from that poll, there's not a lot of optimism in Ukraine for that type of solution. Something like 68% of Ukrainians don't expect fighting to end within the next 12 months. So you get sort of mixed signals from the Ukrainian people there.
Well, and Trump, of course, campaigned on saying that if he were president, he'd end this, within 24 hours, which clearly didn't happen. It seems like there's still a lot of daylight between what Russia's position is, what Ukraine's position is. So whether the art of the deal can actually make this happen remains to be seen. But you had mentioned, potential, DMZ and also with NATO providing some Article 5-like kind of defense, short of full membership, obviously, and that article kicking in. But does this meeting overall maybe hint at NATO evolving a little bit into more of a political alliance beyond defense, with leaders using it more as a platform for coordinated diplomacy? Or where do you see the future of NATO, given how Trump is leveraging that group?
Yeah, so I want to be clear. I think that what came out of that meeting on Saturday was that the U.S. would support Article 5-like protections, not NATO in general. They're just referencing the Article 5 kind of as a convenient reference to kind of imply what type of protections the U.S. would provide. And so I don't think NATO is going to become involved, nor do I think it should in Ukraine. I think the big takeaway for NATO will be, look, Russia's serious about protecting its sphere of influence around the Russian border, and with the Baltic states being brought into NATO, and then most recently with Finland being brought into NATO, I think NATO needs to recognize that Russia is a significant force in the region, and we do need to take its sovereignty seriously. Now, that doesn't mean that Ukraine should become another Belarus and essentially a Soviet or a Russian satellite state. But it does mean that NATO needs to take more seriously the consequences of its pushing further and further east.
Yeah, well, Ray Alexander, really appreciate your commentary this morning. We need to take a break here, but you can follow him at RMA1776. I'd encourage you to do that for a lot of great takes and analysis at RMA1776 on X. And it'll be very interesting to see what the political fallout is of this, whether for Trump, for example, because of his campaign promises, but where he ultimately ends this. I mean, this is one of the biggest stories right now, I think, in the world, and all eyes are kind of focused on President Trump and how he's going to have these negotiations, what kind of agreement he's going to reach. So it will remain to be seen. So very interesting, and we will continue to cover it here, and we will be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Life can be hard, but we have to keep our eyes focused on Jesus. I'm Christy Graham, host of On the Ground with Samaritan's Purse, and I want to encourage you in your walk with God. Listen each week as we go behind the scenes of our work around the world. You'll be challenged and encouraged in your own faith as you hear how God is actively changing lives. Join us for On the Ground with Samaritan's Purse, Sundays at 8:30 a.m. Central, right here on American Family Radio.
Is your success in life being stolen? Here's Pastor Jeff Shreve.
Unbelief is involved in every single sin. Why did Eve eat the forbidden fruit? Because she believed the devil's lie rather than God's truth. Hey, if you don't believe God, you'll never be a success.
Learn what real success can be like. Join Pastor Jeff Shreve on From His Heart each weeknight at 6 Central here on American Family Radio.
Do you believe in the absolute inerrancy of God's holy word? Do you believe in the power of the Holy Spirit to radically change lives and empower us to live like Christ? At Wesley Biblical Seminary, we believe God is raising up a movement of people across our nation and across the world who hold fast to the authority of the Bible and the hope of holiness. We are working today to equip tomorrow's pastors and Christian leaders through biblical and theological education in practical ministry that's accredited, affordable, online, and highly personal. Our programs include undergraduate, master's, and doctoral degrees, certificate programs, and even training for lay people. So whatever your next step is in being equipped for ministry, we're here for you. And if you believe these are the kinds of pastors we need leading our churches in the future, we invite you to learn more about partnering with us through giving. Learn more about Wesley Biblical Seminary by visiting us at wbs.edu today.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I'm Claire from Trinity Debt Management. I'm a counselor, and the reason that I love working for Trinity is because I get to help folks with one of the hardest problems a family can face, and that's financial difficulties. In this day and age, everything is going up. You have higher utilities, higher grocery bills, higher fuel, and those credit card interest rates have gone up as well. We can help you with that. We can help you get lower interest rates, lower monthly payments. In just a few minutes, we put together a plan that gets you out of debt and keeps you out of debt. I love my job. It's a great program and a very smart way to find debt relief.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
I'm Claire, a Trinity counselor. Call me and become debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. Well, now for some good news. This coming from Live Action, a report. Costco, the major wholesalers, which, by the way, if you have not gotten their peanuts in a jar that are it's like this giant bin of them, and they're Virginia peanuts, only from Costco. I think it's Kirkland brand. I'm not getting paid for this. This is not a sponsorship. I just personally love them. If you go to Costco, try it. If you like peanuts, you'll not be disappointed. But this is actually the good news beyond the peanuts. A Costco wholesaler has decided to not dispense the abortion pill. So this is amazing. According to a report from Bloomberg News, Costco Wholesale, though it has not formally issued any notices, has decided to not dispense the abortion pill, milsapristone, and at its more than 500 pharmacy locations. So a group of shareholders urged Costco in 2024 to resist pressure to sell abortion drugs. The company did not say whether this appeal led to their decision, but other pharmacies like Walgreens and CVS have chosen to continue to dispense the abortion pill. So this is great news, and let's welcome in Walker Wildman, who of course is our vice president here at the American Family Association and for AFA Action, which was part of this group that pushed and urged Costco. So this is a huge win, Walker. So thanks so much for AFA Action's work on this.
Absolutely, Jenna. Yeah, this is a big news item and a good news item for our listeners here. This has been a fight that has kind of gone a little bit under the radar, and that is the fight over the abortion pill. The statistic that we all learned, those of us who didn't already know, after Roe v. Wade was overturned, many of us were shocked to hear that over 50% of abortions take place through the abortion pill, not even in an abortion clinic. And so this was a big fight to convince these pharmacies around the country that they don't need to be participating in the murder of innocent life, these babies in the womb. So that's what we did with various shareholder letters and various investment advisor letters that we did last year, where we urged the major pharmacy brands in the country, including Costco and Kroger and others, that it is wrong to dispense mifepristone, the abortion pill. It's not only wrong morally, but it's very risky legally because you're talking about endangering and in many cases taking life and harming the mother, which it's proven to do through various studies. So Costco decided not to engage in this morally wrong and legally risky business, and they just said, hey, we're going to stay out of this. We're not dispensing the abortion pill. We've got thousands of other medications we can dispense, but we're not dispensing a pill that's sole purpose is to take life. So this is a good news item for Costco, and we're going to continue the pressure with Kroger and Walmart and others. They don't need to be dispensing the abortion pill either.
Yeah, so well said, and this is a great thing, and we can thank Costco for their willingness to do this. And do you think that in your various interactions and the shareholder letters and all that, do you think that the argument that it's morally wrong is actually convincing to some of these pharmacies and the big box retailers, or is it more the legal risk? Because it is a risk. I mean, if they dispense this type of medication, this is over the counter. I mean, to think that a woman could just go down to a pharmacy, pick up a pill, and then have an abortion at home. I mean, I've had Abby Johnson, so many other pro-life advocates who are very much advocates for women's health as well. I mean, the left frames this as, this is pro-women, but it's really not, because serious medical complications and even instances of deaths have been reported based on this pill. It is not a good thing, but there is a lot of legal risk. So where do you think the argument is focused?
I think both arguments are actually very effective, because we got to remember these corporate boardrooms and these corporate C-suites are full of humans just like you and I. And I don't know the percentage breakdown, but some of them are faith-based, executives. They some of them may even be Christians or Jews or otherwise. And so we're talking to fellow people that some of them might even share our religious convictions, our Christian convictions. So I think the moral argument has a valid place in the equation. The legal argument is kind of a two-pronged approach here, because you've got the attorneys that are looking at this going, yeah, this is no man's land here. I don't want to be dealing in this, because there's really not a lot of money tied up in this. There's some, don't get me wrong, if insurance covers it, there's always money. But these pharmacies, they've got so much other dispensaries going on, items that they dispense going on, that this is just one pill out of thousands or tens of thousands of offerings that they have. And so when the executives look at the moral side of this and the legal side of this, there's no compelling case to dispense the abortion pill unless they're ideologically driven, which there is some instances of that, or they don't want to face the wrath of the pro-abortion crowd. But This is the fight. I think this is the post-Roe fight, and that is to stop in any way possible, stop the abortion pill. Because and I don't want to get too graphic here for our audience without them being prepared, but people need to go do their own research on the side effects and what actually happens when mifepristone is taken by the woman in order to kill the baby. It's a very, very gruesome, graphic, horror-based experience that women suffer PTSD and other types of mental and emotional trauma when they go through this. So it's very, very bad, equally as graphic and terrible as going into a clinic and having an abortion done.
Yeah, and I really appreciate Walker Wildman your emphasis on that, because when we see instances of this type of pill in mainstream media and entertainment, of course, that is driven by the left, and I'm thinking of shows like Grey's Anatomy and others, that they show this as if a woman comes in and she just takes a pill like you'd pop an ibuprofen and all is good. They don't show the actual effects of this drug, which are horrific. And so they're not giving the truth and the reality of what actually happens to women who are considering using this. And that is a huge argument simply in favor of reality and in favor of life. But you also mentioned that this story is kind of under the radar, but some of these companies may be concerned about the wrath of the left. Do you anticipate that as more companies and pharmacies potentially join Costco, I mean, that's the goal, right, to get them to stop selling this pill, that the left is suddenly going to, call for boycotts, and they're going to ramp up their media attention to this issue?
Yeah, they're definitely, the left is definitely pushing hard against this, and some states like California and New York are actually, and this all started, by the way, when New York officials were threatening companies like Costco and others. I don't know how much presence Costco has in New York, but nonetheless, New York officials were pressuring these pharmacies, telling them, hey, you've got to sell the abortion pill. You have to, from a legal standpoint. And then we came and counteracted that with our letter. And I think that what this is going to come down to is a state-by-state approach where you're going to have these pharmacy brands. They're really going to fall on the side where the majority of states fall, because it's just legally more simple to work through that process. And what you have now is you've got dozens, over 24, nearly 30 states where abortion is outlawed in many cases, if not all cases. And technically, dispensing the abortion pill is participating in illegal activity if the state law doesn't permit abortion and outlaws abortion. And so you've got that angle, too, where if these pharmacies are knowingly dispensing mifepristone in a state using their state license where abortion is illegal, then they're possibly facilitating illegal activity. So that's another angle as well. So the more states that we can get to outlaw this mifepristone and have the attorney generals actually enforce it, the better. And eventually what you're going to have is companies, nationwide pharmacies, that say, look, we've got 30 states where this is outlawed. There's no reason for us to even be in this business at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And wouldn't that be a great outcome? And so in the post-Roe landscape, we know that there are going to be some blue states that are just going to continue abortions, and they're going to fight tooth and nail to have access to abortions. I mean, even up in the third trimester, I mean, things that are genuinely just absolutely horrific. And so this is going to make some of those states basically abortion tourism. And so what's the long-term strategy for the pro-life organizations like AFA Action to continue to, while understanding that reality, to continue to push for pro-life policies even in some of those states?
Yeah, I think we've got to approach it from two sides. The first side is obviously we need to make it to where abortion isn't permissible, and not only not permissible, it's not encouraged either. And then we properly educate the public on the dangers, both morally and otherwise, and health-wise, to taking the abortion pill and having an abortion. And so that's kind of the first approach. The second approach is we've got to make the case that children and families are good for society, good for the country, good for the community, and get away from this notion that children are a burden, and that children, we should be able to pick or choose whether we have to, quote, deal with our children or not, the ones that we're giving conception to. So we've got to get rid of this notion that children are somehow a problem under any circumstance. Children are a blessing from the Lord. Now, some people, have different circumstances that make things more challenging as a parent. But overall, children are a blessing from the Lord, and they should be treated as such. And we shouldn't be punishing children for issues and situations that their parents are dealing with. That's another thing that we have to message to the public. But the last thing I'll say is that we've got to restore strong families, and we've got to restore the marital institution that God himself created and designed, and push that. So this is really a multi-pronged approach, but it obviously we can't be allowing abortion. We just can't be allowing abortion in any case around the country. And so that's kind of the first approach, and then we've got to make it to where less people even want abortions, and that gets into the messaging about parenting and raising children, which is a really long-term cultural battle that we're engaged in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even if these blue states wanted to make abortion illegal until the moment of birth or after birth, if the women, the mothers and the fathers, because of course, there are so many instances of, the men pushing the women to have abortion, and fathers not being ready to be fathers, which is such an excuse. And so we have to put the emphasis on parentage as a blessing, and encouraging families that even in these blue states that might allow it, that if they don't choose that to exercise that and to keep their child, then it doesn't really matter what the law says. We won't see as many abortions taking place. And I don't know, Walker, if you saw this statistic, but as I was just scrolling through social media over the weekend, this was shocking and just really sad. And I want to cover this more later on this week on this program. But 28% of Gen Z babies have been aborted is the statistic. If you calculate all babies conceived during the Gen Z era of 1997 to 2012. This is just so, does that statistic shock you? I just think it's horrible.
Yeah, I've never looked at it from that side as far as looking at it as a percentage of generation, but that's shocking. But I can't dispute it. When you're murdering over 1 million babies a year in the U.S. alone, and birth rates are dropping, you combine those two things together, yeah, that's not surprising at all. And the last thing I want to mention as far as what our solutions are here, we've got to make adoption more affordable and more streamlined. This cumbersome domestic and international adoption process, and very costly. It shouldn't be that way. We've got thousands of children that are in the adoption or in the foster system or up for adoption, and these parents are having to get out loans to go through the adoption process. This has to be reformed at the state level and the federal level. There's no reason that parents who are willing and able and fit to adopt should have to go through a rigorous financial and otherwise process to adopt. And so that's another reform that needs to take place so that children are not in the system very long and are adopted at a much faster pace and a more affordable pace for these families. And so that's some reform that needs to take place.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, Walker, and our audience, our main listeners know, my little brother was adopted, and his birth mother was an unwed teenage pregnancy, and I'm so grateful my parents had the resources to adopt, but it was incredibly expensive. And I wish that more families could see the blessing of adoption, because he's just such a wonderful, amazing young man of the Lord. He's 25 now. I'm so proud of him. We need to have that as a solution, and to give more families this option. So thanks so much, Walker. And as always, you can reach me and my team, Jenna, at afr.net.